Hey guys, this week we've got episode 20 for Pelotero Pickle. Big theme of today's show is college recruiting. How do you go about talking to college coaches? We have a special guest, Dustin Geiger. Check it out. Pickle. Welcome to episode 20 of Pelotero Pickle. We are recording on December 28th, 2020. This will be out tomorrow on December 29th. We just had Christmas. The Tampa Bay Rays just traded Snell to the Padres. Chris's dogs are in the house, and we've got special guest Dustin Geiger, Nuclear Baseball.
What's up?
And I clapped after you did. So everything is just all over the place.
We have special guest Dustin Geiger today because he sent us some questions specific to high school baseball players. He asked us, how do you talk to college coaches? How do you deal with failure? How do you find balance as a student athlete between school, friends, work, commitments outside of the sport? And then he made the comment, he sent it to me. He said, I just want to be a normal kid. I want to talk on that topic. I'm sure you do as well, Chris. But I thought I felt it when he said that. So let's go from the top. How do you talk to college coaches?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a big button thing. Everybody wants to obviously play at the next level at college, but what are the questions that need to be asked to a college coach when you are, on that call, trying to get a feel for the program? It's not just like, that they have this school and they have all of these nice amenities. They have this new facility going in. What are they going to do to make you a better ball player? And, trying to understand what the development plan is for that school, I think is crucial. And when you ask a college coach that, like, hey, what does your normal day look like? What is our day? So for one, as a college coach, you see that, okay, they actually care. They want to get better. They want to put the work in. And then for two, it's that it kind of makes them think like, okay, well, what are we doing? And I think it's super important to find that out, not just to find your right fit for where you want to be for 1, 2, 4 years of your life, whatever it may be in college.
I think, Chris, how did you go about your college selection process? You ended up at Assumption College.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wasn't good at baseball, so that didn't help. Like, I wasn't good. I was scared. I was, being Luke Colabello's son makes you scared of things. No offense, Dad. I love you. You're the man. But I was built to have this fear of challenging myself, which ultimately is probably my favorite thing to do now. But it was super, and this is not that long ago, guys, like 20 years ago. It was, you just went to school somewhere. The recruiting period started after your junior summer. Going into your senior year, you couldn't talk to people till June 1st of during or after your junior year, right? And most of the conversations were just a phone call or, a chat here and there. And then I went to Assumption because the coach called me the most, basically. And I knew I could play there. I knew I could compete. I knew guys from the area were going to school there. And that was it. So ideally, I would have liked to have challenged myself more academically and athletically. But I think now it's easier because there's more lines of communication for kids. Like, you can open up conversations with whoever you want through 90,000 mediums. And you can really, basically, if you want to go to UCLA, you got to get in touch with the guy from UCLA. And realistically, when push comes to shove, I think every kid needs to do two things. One, be self-aware, and B, just do whatever they want to do, right? If you're self-aware enough and you're honest with yourself about where you can go, where you can play, just watching the people around you, then you can play there. And you just have to show up. And we're just caught up in this world where I believe recruiting, you have to get recruited and you have to get calls. Just show up and play, man. Show up and play. Show up and be good.
Yeah, getting recruited certainly helps. In terms of communicating directly with college coaches, you have to understand they're getting just inundated with emails, Twitter messages, phone calls, text. They're getting completely bombarded. they're getting sent numbers, they're getting sent metrics that most of the time they don't care about. I think the number one thing you can do as a player is have a coach that reach out to the coach for you. The referral is probably the strongest foot in the door you can get. You have to do that in a nice, smooth way. I've had players start to work with me explicitly for like referral, and it's not really appreciated when that happens, where they just like, hey, I want to work with you. Can you talk to this person for me? And it's like, well, I don't know you. I don't know your character. I don't know your work ethic. I don't know anything about you. Just because you want to like come pay me to do a lesson doesn't mean I'm going to stick my neck out for you. So when you start looking at college programs that you want to play for, or not college programs, when you look at travel programs you want to play for, tap into their, like, ask what kind of network they have. Who are they going to talk to? Where have they placed players in the past? Have those relationships gone well, or did the kid get there and transfer out after a year? The referral is probably your strongest way to reach out. And then it's about being consistent. It's about replying. It's about communicating, like when your schedules are, when they can come see you play. Are you going to go to their camps on campus? I know it's really messed up with COVID right now. And the whole recruiting landscape is crazy anyway, because rosters are expanded with COVID. It's a tough scene out there. But to me, the number one thing you can do is referral.
Well, I think that's the whole landscape now is so weird with everything, right? So I think it changes everything. I think the dynamic shifted in more ways than one. So maybe I'm the worst person to get advice from because I'm old. I don't know.
I think one thing too with college recruiting that people are so worried about committing right now. Like they just like, I just want to commit to a college right now because the clock has been pushed up so much. You got guys committing as freshmen, sophomores in high school. We have 8th graders that commit before they even play a day of varsity baseball. Like they might not even play varsity baseball for 2 more years and they're already committed to a big time school. So it sets an unrealistic expectation for so many people that, hey, I have to commit now. Instead of finding your right fit, allowing your body to mature and developing yourself to putting yourself in the best position to where it is the best fit. You mentioned kickbacks. Like, are you going to a program and you sticking, or is it, hey, you're going to bounce around to four different colleges in 4 years, and you're not really going to be able to develop the network or the friendships that are, I think, going to help you more in life than just that I played college baseball. The relationships that you build over that span is super important. And if you have the right fit for program and school and city and support system, that's what's going to be more important than, I played at whatever university.
I think that was one of the best pieces of advice that I got before I went to school was somebody told me, try to go to a place where even if baseball doesn't work out, you won't be miserable. And I think a lot of times that gets overlooked. And, to all the points that we've talked about or that have been mentioned so far, college is an experience. It's meant to be an experience. And I think there's so much emphasis on all of the urgency and desire to want to commit or say that I made a verbal or, signing a national letter of intent and all those things, as much as, we've talked about these before, as much as they're cool and they have this cachet or give you this security, at the end of the day, you got to come with it when you get to college, right? You got to post up and you got to get it done, both on the field and in the classroom and the weight room. So all the things that you think are your security blanket that might make you feel cool in front of all your friends or might make you feel special or be able to post something on Instagram, like when push comes to shove, those don't matter because you still got to go get it done. And I was watching, it's funny, I watched QB1, that show on Netflix, and it's crazy because you just try to figure out, how the kid, I'm always curious to see how the kids' careers ended up. And I think it was season 2 was Justin Fields, who's at Ohio State, originally committed to Georgia. He's a Georgia kid. And then Sam Hartman, who is at Wake Forest currently. And then Real Mitchell was the other one. And Real has gone from Iowa State to Temple, where he committed, and he doesn't get many snaps at Temple. So those are some of the best the top recruited, like top highly rated quarterbacks in the country, top 20 highly rated quarterbacks in the country. 2 of them transferred already, and one of them hasn't gotten on the field much. So think about that. Put some context on that, a little perspective there, and think about what that means. Thanks, Jay.
In terms of choosing your actual school, having a plan for your major, even if you communicate with the coach and say, I'm looking at your school because you offered this major. Most kids are just looking at baseball. They just say, hey, I want to go play there because I know the name of the school. Saw them in the College World Series, saw them on TV, whatever. Having any extra layer of detail about the school, maybe it's the location, maybe it's the school size, maybe it's classroom size, like whatever the reason is beyond baseball, that's going to tell the coach you've done your homework. That's a good thing.
How did you guys pick school? Bobby, I kind of know your story a little bit, but you should tell it anyway. Dustin, I don't know yours.
Yeah. So my junior year, I was starting to get a lot of recruiting interest. And
growing up in Florida,
growing up
different than growing up in New Hampshire, Massachusetts.
Growing up in Florida, I mean, it was Fort Myers every weekend for Perfect Game BCS. It was Orlando for big tournaments, Miami for big tournaments. So we were exposed pretty much year round to the recruiting side. And this is before I think Select got to where it was now. Sometimes I think it gets a little watered down nowadays. Back then it was, hey, we had guys from all over the state of Florida. We didn't really practice together. We just came together in tournaments and played. So I had a bunch of interest from Stetson University and up in DeLand, Florida. Pretty sure that's where DeGrom went. And then some like D2s and stuff. And then University of Central Florida, they came at me the hardest from the younger age. And looking back at it, I probably committed to a college too soon. So I give everybody the advice to wait until after during your like summer season before your senior year, or even into the fall of your senior year, to like lock down a commitment. I committed as during my junior high school season. So of my junior year. And it was like, okay, well, UCF's an hour away from home. I'm from Merritt Island, Florida, right next to Cocoa Beach. So it was like, okay, well, proximity to home. Parents are going to be able to come watch play. It's a huge school. They're developing this new facility. They're putting this new facility into place, which, side note, wasn't even completed until I would have been out of college. I like the coaches, the recruiting pitch from Terry Rooney and Cliff Godwin, who were both there at the time. They were both at LSU when they won the national championship. So it was this like big draw to go there. So all the positives were there, and I pulled the trigger on it. And I think it was too early to where, I could have had the likes of, I had talked to Florida State, I had talked to Miami, but they weren't like locked in yet because they wanted me to watch me play during my junior summer. So I think I pulled the trigger too fast on it. But I mean, it was one of those where I think recruiting was done pretty heavily, and that was early back in the junior year was early.
That's almost late now.
12 years ago, 13 years, whatever it was.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know the right questions to ask. I didn't know any of the right questions to ask. It's crazy, man. I would ask so many different questions now than 100%. I would have been.
100%. There's so much that is learned. My dad didn't play baseball. My dad played baseball till he was 12 years old. I always make the joke that like my dad was terrible at baseball. He didn't play past Little League. He had a terrible experience when he was a kid. So when I first started playing baseball, it was like, oh, great, here we go again.
Yeah.
And just basing it off of experience was bad. So like they didn't know. My parents tried their hardest through the college process, through the draft process and everything. Like they didn't know. And that's something that hopefully I'm able to give my son down the line, is just some knowledge.
Right.
Of, hey, here's how you navigate, not just me, not just us. Like, here's how I help you take control of your career and navigate your own plan.
Bobby, how'd you end up at UVM? That's UVM for anybody that doesn't know.
Yeah, University of Vermont no longer has a baseball program, so don't go there if you're trying to play baseball in college. I actually wanted to go to Dartmouth. Dartmouth was my number one choice. I wanted to visit there. In-state Ivy League, number one choice, and didn't get in. So UVM was kind of my backup. I'd gone up there on a recruiting visit. Way up north in Burlington, Vermont, it was cold. On my visit, it was like rainy. They were playing the scrimmage, and I'm like, I could go out there right now and be the starting second baseman. At the time, I was playing second. Like, I could go out there right now. I wanted to be challenged more. They had a business school. I knew I wanted to study business, so it was a pretty safe backup for me. Ended up being a fantastic 4 years for me. Just kind of stumbled into it more than anything. Coach Courier, he's now at Fairfield University. Did a great job with the program. Looking back, like, the number one thing I'd probably look at is from a player development standpoint, like, our gym at UVM was like a closet. Like, it was an afterthought. They ended up, after I left there, they canceled the gymnastics program and they moved into the gymnastics facility, which is like a 15,000 square foot, like, really nice, really legit facility. But before, it was like 3 squat racks, a dumbbell thing. It was like nothing. There was nothing there. The program was run by a former player who's a personal trainer. No, nothing bad to say about him in particular, but it wasn't like this dedicated coach building real programs. It was just like a printout. I still have it. It's just super generic programming. Support from the university in terms of like what your travel's like, what kind of equipment is there. Like, I got 1 pair of batting gloves a year. Like, we had
More than I got.
We had a fundraise. We had a fundraise for cleats and our Florida trip, which it's part of it. I'm not trying to say that to be like unthankful for the opportunity, but like, if you're going to school and you're trying to play baseball competitively, like, selling t-shirts in your dorm isn't conductive to like life.
For 3 years, we didn't have a scheduled team lift because we didn't have anybody on our staff that cared enough about it. The head coaching job was part-time, first of all. So that wasn't it. Yeah, all the things you're saying, I would play the one-up game with you. But so to that point, these are all questions that I would have asked. I would have said, what's the strength and conditioning schedule? What are our practice times like? Who's in charge of our strength and conditioning? We didn't have a strength coach at the school. Now, again, everything's changed, right? Like, major Division I's have strength coaches on every team right now. Our former trainer with the Blue Jays is Chris Joyner, is the strength coach for University of Auburn baseball, and not like University of Auburn, like University of Auburn baseball. So that's crazy. But yeah, I know all the things that you're talking about, and you've got to be one of only probably 6 people in the history of the world to go from New Hampshire and find a place further north to play baseball at, which is crazy.
Well, University of New Hampshire had already canceled their baseball program.
Yeah.
If UNH had a baseball program, they did an article, I think my sophomore year when I was at UVM, of all the players. So we had players that went to Maine, we had players that went to UVM, players that went to just all the I mean, they could have. I definitely would have gone to UNH if they had a baseball program. I would have, in-state guy, played for where you're from. I would have for sure.
Geiger, you got to understand how ridiculous it is that we went to northern climates to play baseball. Like, you don't know anything about that. I mean, you played in probably like Boise with the Cubs, right? And stuff like you played in some cold climates, but it was later because like the affiliated season doesn't start till April. Like, yeah. You have to understand, February and March in these places is like you want to stick a needle through your eye trying to get a hit.
So funny. Yeah, I mean, funny enough with that, there was two affiliates that were in the north. Boise, I skipped over, and they were short season, so they didn't start their season until the end of June anyway. And then Peoria, Illinois was our low A in the Midwest League. And the first year, my first full season, I went to extended and then started like 3 weeks in the AZL before jumping to Peoria. So I didn't jump in until July. And then the next year, 2012, I was supposed to break camp, ended up breaking my hamate bone on the last day of spring training. So I missed the first just under 2 months of the season. So I missed the cold again.
So you don't know anything about the cold. You know nothing about hitting in the cold.
The coldest that I ever played in, and this you guys are gonna like make fun of me for this. It got just below freezing in Hermosillo and Mexican winter ball in 2018, and it was like 30.
Yeah,
and no snow. There wasn't like it was. It wasn't. There's zero precipitation.
Every single year in UVM, every single year we played at least one game with snow falling.
yeah.
The coldest I've ever been was at a game at Central Connecticut. I don't know what the temperature was, but the wind chill was like negative. It had to be like 10 degrees. My glove was frozen open. I couldn't close my glove. We all had hand warmers in our back pockets. Between every pitch, we put our hand in our back pocket.
Yeah.
I forget what year, my sophomore, junior, we came back from our Florida trip. So like, hey, we came back from Florida into a blizzard. Our light tower had fallen into fell into our field. And we got home from our trip and had to shovel our cars out for like an hour just to get home.
That's tough.
Brutal.
Playing in the cold, ain't it? I played in the coldest recorded doubleheader in the history of Major League Baseball. So we played the Twins, we played the Blue Jays. Ironic, both teams I played for. 31 degrees at first pitch of game one. By the night game, it was a split. So it probably got to like 20 by the night or 15 with the wind chill. And I tell you what, I didn't even feel cold during the game because I was like, I have my little thing on. Because I'm like, we did this every weekend in college. Like, I played a doubleheader at Merrimack one time. I remember when we got done the game, we had, as part of our fundraise, our gear that we had to buy, we would buy these big, like, football. I told the team we were getting the football jackets one year because it was so cold. And I raised enough money every year that I could just get all the gear. But, it was bad.
I went Johnny Tough Guy, and I went short sleeves, eye black every game because to me, it was just win the mental battle.
Yeah, I tried to wear as many layers as possible where I could still move. I would come back from Florida every year hitting probably like 450, and then 3 weeks later, a month later, I'd be hitting 305 or 270 because you can't feel your hands outside. And we're using wood too. So think about that. How much of an idiot am I? I went to a school like where academically I feel like I wasn't challenged. We won 44 games in 4 years, and I had to switch to wooden bats, and it was in the cold. So basically, setting your head up against the wall. I made the worst college decision ever.
It just made you mentally tough.
That's what it was.
We'll go with that.
You know what? Practicing every day in nice warm weather or being outside in the field having 3-hour cage sessions, that wouldn't have made me mentally tough at Akron College or at Rollins or at University of Tampa. I needed to go. You know what I call that when people call it mental toughness? I call it being an idiot. Basically, right? Like, you're building mental toughness there. I'm like, no, I'm just an idiot.
No, this sucks. I don't
like
all
this stuff. Because I can build mental toughness. Any better.
Like,
if I really want to build mental toughness, like I can go walk on hot coals or like, lay on the needle boards. Mental tough. Like I don't need to be cold and want to kill myself at school.
Yeah, that ain't it.
All right, let's go next topic because we went many tangents on that one.
Yeah.
Dealing with failure, and I think specific to college players, whether maybe you go to a tournament or maybe you go to a showcase and you just bomb. There was a popular tweet over the weekend about a pitcher who was going to get drafted, got knocked around quite a bit. And he's like, I realized they actually wanted to see how I responded to failure. I'm sure he got drafted. I didn't really look into the player very much, but dealing with failure. You want to frame the question specific to what you were thinking or?
No, I mean, my thought was, talking about a high school or college age player. A lot of times you don't fail until you get to that point. For me, I was fortunate that I didn't fail until I got to pro ball. High school was a breeze. The jumping right into pro ball is the first time it's like, whoa, okay, these guys, everybody here is the best at their school. It's like that wasn't, best at their school or best in the academy, whatever it was. That's why they're here. I think a lot of times that happens in college as well. I remember on a Pickle episode in the past, you guys talked about like, hey, whatever you did in high school, like it doesn't matter anymore. You can't leverage it. Like we said earlier in this episode about that's your comfort factor. It's gone. You're just another guy. You're starting fresh. You're with a 0-0, 0-0-0 batting average, whatever. So, when we look at it from that aspect of the first time you fail, how do you respond? Do you crumble to it? Do you understand that there are people out there looking to see how you react when you fail? It sucks. Failure's never fun, but there's always so much that can be learned from it. Which is so cliche to say, but you learn through your failures. If you just blow up every time you fail, if you spike a helmet, spike a bat every time you strike out, every time you miss a ball, then you're not getting any better from that. And people get super turned off by it. So from the high school player that sees that, hey, it's not the end of the world. Watch Big League Baseball. Guys make errors, guys strike out, guys walk a guy on 4 pitches. But for the most part, they don't blow up very often. And who was it with the Pirates a few years ago that Rodriguez just blew up the Gatorade cooler?
Yeah. A boxing match with the Gatorade cooler.
I was talking to a coach that had him when they were in Philly, and he's like, nicest guy ever. Like, will do anything. Super great guy. But so many people remember him because he blew up on the water cooler. Like, that was such a big thing because it was funny to watch. But that's how he reacted to that failure in that moment. Just got so bottled up that he exploded, like literally exploded.
I think in the big leagues, at least you can go down the tunnel and blow up.
Yeah.
Don't you have like a Joe Mauer story about
I got a couple.
Joe Mauer, the most like understated, calm, just no reaction.
I'm going to tell that story in a minute. I want to know,
Yeah.
Did you guys have anybody telling you this stuff when you were young? Did you have anybody like explaining this to you?
Nobody explained it. It was, hey, don't do that. There was never a why. Like, hey, why don't I show this? Like this is how I'm feeling in the moment. Like, why don't I show it? I think for me, it was just something that I didn't want to, show my butt in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it made me look bad. I thought it was a bad representation of myself, of the team I was playing for, and, of my parents in the stands. That all kind of, at a young age, that kind of all went through my head when dealing with it. And like I said too, like, I didn't really fail very much at the high school level. Yeah, I'd make errors, didn't strike out a lot, had a lot of success, hit the ball really well. So like, I didn't even have to really learn like what it was like to fail until years later, when it was like, it mattered. And then if you showed your butt and you were a bad, bad reaction guy to failure, now the front office staff labels you as like a hothead. And, if he doesn't succeed, he freaks out, and that's not going to play at the highest level when, hey, like if you compound 50,000 people in the stands with your inability to control your emotions, like you're not going to help the ball club win.
I didn't have it. I literally had no one that talked to me about dealing with failure. My dad taught me about compete, right? But he was a pitcher who, his dad was very critical of him, military background, right? Like his father was in the Army. So my dad would strike out 14 and walk 2 and throw a 2-hit shutout. And it was always, why'd you walk 2 guys, right? Instead of, great job, or, pat on the back. So I seeing it from a pitcher side, and not to say that it's easier, it definitely is, but, not to be critical of it. I didn't understand that it was okay to go 0 for 8. Like that was unacceptable at my house. Right. And you guys know me. I mean, I'm obviously much more low key than I was then in terms of my emotions, but I'm definitely extrovert, think a lot, mind's going. So when I went 0 for 8 in high school, it's like the world was ending. Right. And that happened. I wasn't that good in high school. Like my freshman year, I played freshman baseball. My sophomore year, I played JV baseball, and those both went pretty well. My junior year, I didn't start my first varsity game. Like, I was on the bench, and, I had to grind and claw to kind of get things there. But I didn't know. Nobody ever talked to me about this stuff. Nobody ever talked to me about, hey, it's okay to go for 4. Like, you don't have to like it, but like you can live with it. And those 4 at-bats don't matter going in the next one. So I learned more about all this stuff, and really I didn't learn anything in college either. I had to build my own kind of defenses to all of it. But when I got to professional baseball and got to be around Rich Gedman was really when I was able to build in these kind of checkpoints for how to, I guess, just check back in during games or during seasons, or and I wish somebody had explained it to me when I was younger, because I think that's the part that can really separate you. Like Bobby, you were talking about the pitcher that got that was supposed to get drafted. And he's like, I didn't really realize the body language thing, and people are looking at it all the time. To me, it's more about how you respond to failure than it is anything else, and success.
Yeah, my high school coach, Mike Lee. How you doing, Coach Lee? Hope you're listening to this. I'll send the link. He was my all-star coach. So his son was 1 year younger than me coming up through Little League. And he coached the all-star teams when I was 10 years old and when I was 12 years old. So I got to be around him quite a bit at a young age. And he was a big mental game of baseball guy, the book Mental Game of Baseball. He would always talk about the precious present, to the point that it was like a running joke among the players, like precious present. But the lesson kind of sank home with me. So understanding, being in the moment and reading that book, there were things about, I remember reading about Ozzie Smith and how like there's, 230 pitches in the game and you have to be ready for one because that ball might be hit. So, always staying ready for that one opportunity to make a difference in the game was kind of where my headspace was at all times. It was just be ready always. There were certainly times when emotions kind of got the best of me. And I think I remember my sophomore year, or no, my senior year in college, my thumb was injured. I was super frustrated. I was making outs and just blew up a couple of times. One time the dean of the business school was at the game and I like came in the dugout and slammed my helmet. Like I couldn't hit. My thumb was literally broken. Like I had surgery on it like a week later. She's like, calm down. And I like gave her the nastiest look. Like, what am I doing? It was like a out of body experience. I'm like, I need to back up a little bit mentally from where I'm at right now, because I'm not in a good place. I was so frustrated. So the lesson there is like, don't bring your off the field stuff onto the field. Like when you cross the line, when you check in when you get to the clubhouse that day, like leave it behind you. You got to be able to stay in the moment and not let that stuff affect you, because it will. And Chris, we've talked about this with your whole mental, emotional state going into trying to perform. If you're not there, if you're not in the now, you're not gonna be the best player you can be. We had Steve Springer on about, confident guy, not confident guy. Like if you're trying to be really good, and this is why I don't like the rah-rah stuff that happens with kids planning out bat flips and stuff. Like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Don't get excited about it. Like be happy and celebrate with your teammates and stuff. But some of the stuff goes so far over the top. What Dustin was saying earlier about, you might be in front of 40,000 people. If you're trying to bat flip, like you better be really good, really, really, really good really good. And to get there, and then the number of people that are making judgments on you to get to that point, like if you're like bat flipping when you're 18 years old against some slapdick outfielder who's not a pitcher and it's an 18-3 game and you think it's cool, like it just, where's your line? You just got to know where your line is on like, oh, I'm not going to control my emotions in this situation, but when it matters, I will.
Yeah.
Those lines will get blurred on you real quick.
Well, the funniest thing, and I've referred to The Last Dance, Michael Jordan 1,000 times probably this year, because it's the greatest thing that ever happened. And one of my favorite line about the whole thing is they said Michael Jordan was the best at being present. Dude, like just being present. And it's unbelievable how difficult it is to do, to be present in every moment and make the focus of that moment be winning. Being checked in mentally. And so if I could literally do anything, I've gone through success, I've gone through failure, blah, blah, whatever. The moments when I was at the best in my career, and it was so belligerently obvious, like feeling it in my brain, was when I was the most checked in and I knew how to control my own stuff that was going on, be it breathing, be it any emotions, being making an out, the result of a previous at bat, success, whatever. It's awesome. It's an awesome feeling, because you were talking about out of body. This feels in body, where everything slows down. The whole world slows down for you. And that's unbelievable. So to that point, you asked me about the Mauer story before. We all need emotional outlets, right? There are times when I think you wouldn't be human if you didn't have one. And Joe Mauer is the sweetest guy on the planet, literally, like the nicest guy. Everything you see is what you get. When he says hi to you, you walked up, hey, what's up, Joe? Nice to meet you. Hey, Chris, how are you, man? Like, pleasure to meet you. It's like, I'm happy for you. Like, just just normal, low key, right?
He's Minnesota nice.
Yeah, Minnesota nice. Perfect. So it's like my 4th game in the big leagues, 6th game in the big leagues. And, I've never seen this guy do anything but either get 2 hits a game or just be like super chill when he didn't. So he makes and he would always come in the dugout. And if I feel bad for the people that are listening to the podcast, he would just like sit in the dugout, like straight up, hands on his knees, very proper. So he's just like super like the same all the time. He randomly like makes an out. And I don't even know. I think it was like his second at bat. And he had gotten like a bad call in his first at bat. And then this time he kind of like hooked the ball. He's still hitting 330 or whatever. But he comes in, he goes into the tunnel, and all of a sudden I just hear, wow, like just noise everywhere. So then I like kind of poke my head around, and like the bat was like blown up, and comes back out, and he like walks in, sits back down. He's like just normal, like straight face. And then he noticed that there were a couple splinters from the bat on the ground. So he went and like slowly picked them up and threw them more. I was like, who breaks their bat and picks up the splinters on the ground? But after that, he was just right back to checked in. So maybe that's what you need. Some people have the punching bags. Joe decided to do it with his bat. That I was so overwhelmed at that moment. I said, wow, Joe Mauer does that too. So crazy.
Awesome. Yeah. Joe Mauer, closet bat breaker. How about that? Let's get into the next topic. How do you balance life as a student athlete with commitments to school, work, friends? The quote, I just want to be a normal kid. Felt it. I'll start with this one. So I worked at Domino's Pizza when I was in high school. I worked at BJ's Wholesale Club when I was in high school. I can make a pizza. I can make a pizza, throw it. I can do all that. Spending time, I ran winter track to stay in shape for baseball. I basically didn't go skiing or snowboarding for like 8 years because I didn't want to get hurt. The balance, I think, is fake. I don't think the balance is going to be really, really shifted to whatever it is that you're trying to get. You're making sacrifices, and some players are just good enough that they don't need to make sacrifices. Like I was reading a thing about Chad Ochocinco about how like he eats McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and still has like the physique of a Greek god. I was never that good. So for me to get to where I wanted to be, I had to not go out and be in the party scene. Just didn't even go near it whatsoever. Cause number one, I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to get suspended or not be able to play because of a social decision I made. But it was also like after school, I was in the weight room. I was getting good grades because I needed to I wanted to go to Dartmouth. So I needed really good grades to go to Dartmouth. I worked because I wanted to get my own vehicle. So I needed to have money to buy a vehicle. So you end up, for me, my experience was you end up being surrounded by other like-minded people. So your social circles become your teammates and the kids that are working hard next to you. And those bonds get pretty tight. My experience getting to college was that there's more people like you, not just in your sport, but in other sports. So that the athletes tended to kind of get along because you're all fighting the same fight. So there's a lot of camaraderie there. I just think that the concept of balance doesn't really exist, and you're going to have those, I just want to be a normal kid moment, but you don't. It's just a time when you're tired, you're stressed, and you're just feeling pressure. And if you don't love it, you're not going to do it. So you have those moments of, I don't want to call it weakness, but you have those moments of like, why am I doing all this? And those moments are usually pretty fleeting. And maybe there's a haircut rule, Chris. If you say it 3 times, you got to get a haircut.
Rule 3, man. Rule 3. I'm curious to hear Dustin here because I've talked too much anyway.
Yeah, obviously this was a topic that I posed, and that quote is from me. Like I remember saying that to my dad when I was 17 or 18 years old. I don't remember the exact age. I remember the location was literally like in our living room. And Bobby, what you just said about like, it's just like this little moment, and I never really meant it, but that little thing where you're like, I don't know if it's FOMO, or what, but I remember that moment pretty vividly, and then it went away. And I'm pretty sure my dad's like, no, you don't. I'm pretty sure that was the response, was like, no, you don't. Like, you don't you want it too bad. Like you put too much work into baseball to like just let it go away. So just to so you can go party when you're 17 years old and to get into trouble and make all these bad decisions that aren't going to set you up at all to deal with life. It's actually going to set you back like that. It was never a true thing. It was just that little mental break or mental weakness that crept in for a split second and was said. The balance piece, you can't truly have a 33%, school, 33% work, 33% friends. Like you're leaving a percent off, but you can't do it. Like what do you want? Like, what do you want? Do you want to play at the next level? Do you want to just go to college? Do you just want to go to college to go to school? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But if that's what you want and you just want to go to college, what are you doing playing baseball? Why don't you take that extra energy and apply it to getting better at whatever field you want to go into for your life? For me, it was baseball was the number one thing. And when that question that was asked, earlier, like knowing what your major is when you go into college, I had no idea. It was like I was going to college to play baseball. That was like the only thing. And I think that's where that little break happened, because I had all these friends that were having all this fun and my sole focus was to play baseball at the next level. I had set goals from a super young age after reading Derek Jeter's book, one of his autobiographies, where he kind of talked about his path. And I remember like one of his big things we talked about was setting goals. I mean, I was a young kid when I did this, and it was, hey, I want to make these all-star teams. I think I was like 10 when I set these goals. I want to make the all-star team, finish out my little league years. And then at the time it was like, hey, I want to make, little league all-stars 13, 14, because there was still little league at 13 and 14, like pretty heavily played back then. And then my goal was I wanted to make varsity baseball as a freshman. And then the next goal was to play college baseball, pro baseball, big leagues. So this goal setting process, that's what I wanted from such a young age. So I prioritized my things. I prioritized, hey, I was in the cage. I had this joke with not even a joke. I talked to my high school players the other day. They're like, hey, what was your squat max in high school? I remember being like, I didn't lift in high school. Like, and then I thought back to it, and I was in team, like our team lifted. Whenever our team was working out, I worked out, but I didn't have access to, facilities like we have nowadays. Like we step out on the floor to a 6,000 square foot gym. We've stepped next door. There's 10,000 square feet of baseball space. Like we got a freaking turf infield here. I didn't have that stuff. It was, hey, what do you have at your high school? And I had a cage and I had a field. So that's what I prioritized, my skill work. But it was 7 days a week. It was, Sunday afternoon when you could be at the house or at the beach. I was 15 minutes away from the beach growing up. Could have been at the beach. No, we were at the baseball field, tee work, front toss, dad throwing bad BP. Sorry, Dad. But that's what we prioritized. So the idea of having a truly balanced life wasn't there. Now you do need mental breaks. You do need an outlet other than just your sport, or I do think you get burnt out. What is that? What is that other hobby? I still played video games when I was in high school. That might've been my little break. I got into not a fair amount of trouble, but I made some bad decisions in high school that looking back, I shouldn't have done. So that was I think my rebellious attempt at being a normal kid. And, but at the end of the day, prioritized what needed to be done. And for me, that was playing baseball.
I wish the screen had switched to me a couple times because my back just jacked up really badly. So I'm glad nobody had to see that other than you guys. No, I think everything you're saying is, and I think we'll probably all agree, it never felt like work to me. It didn't feel like work when I was growing up because it was what I wanted to do. I still, to this day, I'm convinced that if you do what you want to do in life, it'll never feel like work. A job will never feel like work. Sport will never feel like work. I just think you commit. I never felt like there was no balance. Like let's just say you commit 4 or 5 hours a day to training, whatever that looks like, right? Whether it's lifting, running, hitting, skill, like there's still 19 hours in the day. You only sleep for like 8 of them, and maybe in college less, more. I don't know, who knows? But I never felt like anything was taken away from me. I wanted to be at the cage. I wanted to be, at practice. I wanted to be at all the places where baseball was happening. I didn't want to be at parties. I didn't want to be drinking. I didn't drink in high school, and I didn't really drink in college either. But you could go be social and not need those things that everybody else needed, right? So, I wanted to go hit BP and have my dad throw me a bad BP. You know how many times my dad dotted me? Did your dad ever dot you? Bobby, your pops never threw you BP, right? Like,
No. Big computer guy.
Yeah.
Not a big BP guy.
Yeah. So
I don't think my dad ever did it on purpose. I think it just kind of happened.
Lou dotted me more times. He'd hit me in the legs, but I'd always get him back because he didn't know how to throw BP without the L screens that have the triangle. So I would always square him up right in the kidney, I guess, or whatever. One time I thought I shot him. I was probably 15, and I hit one right back to the L screen. Lou, get behind the triangle. Kept telling him, get behind the triangle, get behind the triangle. And he didn't and get hit. But I think with all that comes, you just have to be aware, man. You just have to work. You have to work at your craft and be diligent about what your hard work looks like, how you're doing your hard work. Be smart about your hard work. And to your point, Dustin, I didn't have access to, what 180 performance looks like. I didn't have access to any of that. I was lucky enough that my high school Legion coach owned an indoor facility, I guess we'll call it. It was cement floors, bad lights, and single wheel pitching machines. And in my high school batting cage was literally looked like a dungeon. It was literally a dungeon. Bad, like the worst lights in the history of the world. The worst. Couldn't see. And that was it. So you just figured it out. You went and played. You went outside, you threw, you hit, did whatever you could. If you had to go pick up the balls, you went and picked up the balls. It was what it was. And just did it because you wanted to. And yes, I didn't lift a weight probably until I was a freshman in college, I don't think. Maybe even a sophomore. I lifted a couple when I was a freshman.
Mostly bicep curls.
Oh, yeah.
Show off for the
curls for the girls, man. That was all you did. That was what we needed. We needed biceps and abs. Come on.
All right. Last thing I want to say on that topic is I think it's 10% of high school players play in college. So if you're trying to be normal, 90% of normal is not making it to college ball. All right, next topic. A little bit lighter, different kind of feel here. Where do jumps in hitters come from? When do they tend to come? So at what point are hitters making big improvements, and what causes that?
Broad jumps or vertical jumps?
Performance jumps, Christopher.
Every direction from the middle out.
Middle out.
Datas, manipulating datas.
Manipulating datas. Where do jumps and hitters come from? Consistent work, I think, would be the easiest answer to that. The once a week lesson player tends to not make as many strides forward. They, I hate asking the question and getting the answer. Hey, when's the last time you hit? Because I know. Like, you look at a player, you work with a player every week, when's the last time you hit? Last week with you. I'm like, nice. That ain't it. So the first step in that lesson player is the first 30 minutes are trying to build back to where you were the week before. Sometimes it's more than that. Like, sometimes you can't go through new topics. So it's the biggest jumps is when you have a plan and you execute by day in and day out, putting the work in. 3, 4, 2, like a 2, 3, 4 day a week program would be kind of ideal for that, I guess, to have some structure to your work. And they happen with consistency. Justin Turner, I know, talked about when he did his swing change. It took an entire off season, every single day. Like, I think it was six out of the 7 days out of the week, trying to figure it out. Not an hour a week. Like, it was hours upon hours and thousands upon thousands of swings to try to figure something out. And that's an elite level player. That's not an average high school player that doesn't fully have proprioception of their body. And like that's an elite level player. So jumps are going to come from just putting the work in. And I think when they come is dependent on the player. I don't think there's any set number of like when that light bulb finally goes off and you're like, I can feel it, or like, that's it. And for another, we never say we figured it out when we're talking about hitting, because
you think you got to figure it out,
it blows up on you. So that I think it's just consistency and work and having a plan.
You brought up Turner, right? Turner had already played in the big leagues when he started making the swing changes. So, and people ask me that a lot, like how did you do it, right? In the off season, I really went into the swing change. And first of all, let's clarify one thing. If I don't hit just about every day, 6 days out of 7 at least during the season, which is normal because you play every day at the professional level. But if I wasn't hitting every day, or at least 5 days out of 7 in the off season, I felt like I wasn't doing anything, right? Because again, it's like learning how to walk again. Hitting is not one of those things. There's so much feel and mechanical need for repetition to just, you want to make it so that it's like breathing. It's second nature. It's a subconscious act. And having to think about how I'm going to hit a ball on the outside corner versus how I'm going to hit the ball on the inside corner. We're trying to make the proactively reactive decision-making show up. And if you're not doing it all the time, it's almost impossible, because you correlate, results to feels and thoughts and things like that. So when do you see the biggest jumps? It's, one of two things, right? In high school, like, you grow. You just grow. You start becoming a man, right? And whether that's through an off season of training or playing another sport, and whatever it may be, when you grow, when you have a jump in physicality. But yeah, for sure, they come over time. And as a player, like you said, you don't necessarily feel them unless you make a drastic change. You don't, and it's hard to apply the feeling of what your change was until you get into a game. So in the offseason, it's really hard, because if you're not facing live pitching, if you're not taking at bats, if you're not experiencing success, failure, then it becomes difficult to even interpret those things, because at the end of the day, for me, it was always results in the game. Now we have different ways of tracking stuff. So in the cage, you can really remember. I remember all the time when I was in high school, I'd hit my first ball of the off season. And obviously I was trying to hit a pull side tater, because why wouldn't I? I'd be like, oh my God, that ball's going so much harder than it was last year. And really, did I know? No way. Now we have all the data to track that stuff and tell us and reaffirm things to us. To me, it's so much easier now to actually pay attention to where you are. And in some capacity, I think it might be a little bit paralyzing too. Like, if you use the tech too often and you're not focused on the right things, then it's easy to just get caught in the exit velocity trap. It's easy to get caught in the I want to hit a homer trap. And I think that's, like, to me, the jumps become jumps in consistency and awareness of how to handle yourself in the batter's box. And those are hard to recognize unless you're out on the field. I felt like I played 6 years of independent ball and I was the same player every year. I was the same. And then maybe a little bit better, a little bit worse, a little bit better, a little bit worse. But then really when I started to really become obsessed with the swing and how I was training and performing and thinking about the bat going to the baseball, that's when it happened for me. But with young hitters, I think when they have aha moments, it's really cool when you explain something to them that they didn't really get. And those light bulb moments, you never know what they're going to be, but they happen, and it's cool to see them.
Yeah. My comments on this are, like Chris was saying, players get older, they go through puberty, they get stronger. It just happens. They're gonna experience just a different kind of batted ball experience just because they're bigger and stronger. Biggest thing for me was when hitters started just developing awareness and being educated about the swing and what they were trying to do and having a plan and being deliberate. When hitters took ownership of their work, that's when the real change happened, because I could tell you what you're doing wrong every single swing. When I saw a hitter making adjustments on their own, when they were starting to feel their way through stuff, when they stopped themselves, mid-round and be like, hey, what do you got on this? Asking better questions. That's when I knew things were happening. That's when I knew the player was starting to make some changes. The other thing I want to say on it is that I think it's funny that the best players in the world are the ones who practice the most. So if you look at major league players, minor league players, they're taking batting practice every single day. They're taking hundreds of swings every single day with their early work, with their on-field work. They're practicing more than anybody, and they're the best. So if you're trying to be better and you're only doing a 1-hour lesson once a week, what are you doing? Like, what are you
I'm not
doing?
even scratching the surface in the hour. I'm not really not like 3-4 hour cage sessions. But the funny thing is most of it is not centered around swinging. It's around talking about the swing and talking about the feels that go with it. Those are my favorite when you have those sessions. How many times we'd stay in the cage with Rich Gedman for 3 hours when we were starting professional baseball. Like I'd just in the off season, we'd be sitting there talking. I'd take 100 swings in a night and we'd be there for 3 hours. It's not all about the swing. The swings need to just have the right intent. It's impossible to take 4,000 swings in a day. Like not. I mean, your hands will literally fall off. But the practice needs to have direction and it needs to be thought out and it needs to be, you need to correlate feel to real all the time.
Yep. All right. Post show. Dustin and I were talking before we started recording. Chris, you already said you were terrible in high school. You didn't even play. You didn't even start your junior year. What
an idiot.
What a loser.
But I tell you what, I got one of those. Got a couple
Dustin,
of those.
There we go.
Dustin was like,
what's that? What's that?
Dustin goes, I'm definitely the best high school baseball player. And I was
Without
like,
a doubt.
no, let me peacock a little bit. Let's see what. He's like, I played 4 years of varsity baseball. I hit 700 before they called me up this freshman year. Just get senior year stat line.
Senior year stat line would have been, I think it was 28 games. 20. There it is.
Nobody can see you, Chris.
Nobody can see it. It's okay. I'm going to keep
I'm
talking.
just going to leave it here.
Yeah,
that's fine.
28 games. I hit 530, 534 with like 7 homers and 30 something RBIs, bunch of doubles. It only struck out like 5 times maybe. If we're going back, opening that yearbook up, like Chris is opening the yearbook. His just like looks like a nicer yearbook over there.
No, my senior year, I hit 306 with no homers, and
Chris
I don't
is
know
doing
how
his
many.
best Jeff Fry impression right now.
I don't know how many mistakes. Yeah, my senior year,
Hide mine in the
306,
past.
no homers. Oh, sorry, this is my clear. This is when the Baseball Writers of America named me New England Player of the Year. The year I hit 321 in the big leagues, but we're talking about my senior year. That's right. Hang on. That's right next to my American League Player of the Week.
Stick to the question. What was the question?
Yeah, I was terrible in high school. I had no homers. The only homer I hit in high school was taken away from me because rain delay in the fourth and a third inning. I hit a homer and I was like, oh, bro, I hit a high school homer. And then it started raining and we had to start the game from the first inning, what a ridiculous rule, by the way.
Stupid rule. I think did they change that this year?
I don't know.
I think it was this year in the big leagues that they were doing continuations instead of resets.
Yeah.
Which is how it should be.
Right.
In the first place. If the game doesn't get canceled, then you have to continue it. It doesn't start over.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Yeah. Well, I had to wear it in high school. I wasn't good. So I started my senior year 6 for 36. And I know that because Lou Colabello kept really in-depth stats, not because Game Changer had them. Lou would have a sheet at home. It was like, look at your stats.
You suck right now.
Dude, my freshman year, it was funny. My freshman year of college, he would print out the whole Northeast 10. Like, he didn't know how to just print one sheet on a computer. So he'd get this massive list of stats. Yeah, I was not I hit a lot of doubles because we played at a huge field, like massive, 600 feet to center. Nobody hit a homer there. So not a good. Dustin wins the who's the better high school player game.
Yeah, my stat line, I hit. I think my sophomore year was still the 2 3/4 drop fives, so I hit 500 that year. Then the next 2 years I hit 450-ish. I was like first team All-State, but that's New Hampshire, so who cares? Good player, but I didn't put up his kind of numbers.
Pickle out!
So we're done?
Yeah, we're done.
All right, Pickle out. We out.